Hi there, welcome to my channel where I dive into fascinating economic trends and analyze their impact on society. In a recent opinion piece, we must tackle the looming debt crisis before it's too late. The Financial Times called for an urgent solution to the debt challenges of low and lower middle income countries. The IMF, not that IMF, but the International Monetary Fund, released its report into international debt, both private and public. The week before, the World Bank had also released its debt report. Both reports highlight the size of the debt burden for many poor countries and emerging economies. Today, therefore, I shall be looking at sovereign debt. So, what is sovereign debt? Sovereign debt is debt that is incurred by countries or governments. It is the debt of nations because even though the government may be the one borrowing, it ostensibly does so on behalf of the whole nation. Before I continue, however, do visit our website where I curate news and publications from international financial organizations and world central banks. Please also subscribe to this channel and be informed whenever we publish a new video. According to Wikipedia, a country's gross government debt, also called public debt or sovereign debt, is the financial liabilities of the government sector. Changes in government debt over time reflect primarily borrowing due to past government deficits. A deficit occurs when a government's expenditures exceed revenues. The IMF puts it this way: when Edward III of England ran out of money to finance the 100 Years' War with France, he turned to the banking families of Florence. The loans they gave him were extremely expensive, and when Edward failed to become King of France, he was unable to repay the debt in full. Over the centuries, the sovereign's debt became sovereign debt, the multi-trillion, multinational, multi-currency network of debt obligations that we know today. So governments borrow both locally and on foreign markets. They may issue bonds or access facilities available from multilateral institutions like the IMF or the World Bank. Some loans are bilateral, meaning government to government, and other liabilities are project-based and may be in the form of public-private partnerships. Although in theory, project-based loans should be non-recourse, in practice, when a sovereign is involved, in many instances, lenders want guarantees from the government. The same may happen with respect to state-owned companies, even though the loan may be in the name of the entity, but it may find its way via guarantees onto the government's balance sheet. How much debt is there? According to the IMF 2022 Global Debt Monitor, total world debt, public plus non-financial private debt stocks, declined 10 percentage points of GDP in 2021 to 247% of GDP, $235 trillion US. This follows the largest one-year increase in global debt in 2020, when it rose by 29 percentage points of GDP. The fall in debt accounted for one-third of the increase in 2020. The world's public debt fell from 100% of GDP in 2020 to 96% of GDP in 2021, supported by strong real GDP growth, high inflation, and the withdrawal of COVID-19 fiscal support measures. In an IMF blog post titled "Riding the Global Debt Roller Coaster," Vitor Gaspar and others say the fall in debt was largest in advanced economies, where both private and public debt fell by 5% of GDP in 2021, reversing almost one-third of the surge recorded in 2020. In emerging markets, excluding China, the fall in debt ratios in 2021 was equivalent to almost 60% of the 2020 increase, with private debt falling more than public debt. In low-income developing countries, total debt ratios continued to increase in 2021, driven by higher private debt. For a fuller picture of sovereign debt, I should mention that the debt of the United States as a percentage of GDP is one of, if not the highest in the world. This is always one of the most contentious issues in the US Congress, especially when the various governance structures are split between the Democrats and Republicans, and sometimes leads to a government shutdown. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen sent an alarming letter to the US Congress about the American debt ceiling. In a subsequent CNN interview with Christiane Amanpour, she warned that if America were to default, it could affect its credibility, lead to a recession, and embroil international financial markets. Of course, the US is in a completely different position compared to other countries because all its debt is denominated in dollars, and probably the largest portion is domestically held. Even the debt that is externally held, for instance by China, is unlikely to be a threat to the US government solvency because it suits those governments and private institutions to continue holding US debt instruments. Who are the major lenders? 1. The usual suspects of the so-called advanced economies, members of the Paris Club of International Creditor Organizations. According to the website of the Paris Club is an informal group of official creditors whose role is to find coordinated and sustainable solutions to the payment difficulties experienced by debtor countries. The origin of the Paris Club dates back to 1956, when Argentina agreed to meet its public creditors in Paris. Since then, the Paris Club has reached 478 agreements with 102 different debtor countries. Since 1956, the debt treated in the framework of Paris Club agreements amounts to 614 billion US dollars to China. According to a blog post by Jeff Dawson on the Liberty Street economic site of the New York Federal Reserve titled A Closer Look at Chinese Overseas Lending, China has become the largest official creditor in the world, with outstanding loans that are larger than those of the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and Paris Club bilateral lenders combined. 3. Multilateral institutions, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. What are the implications of sovereign debt? Debt service payments, especially on external debt, tend to impact budgets negatively. They impinge on governments' abilities to finance many programs, including critical ones. That's it for today's video. I hope you found this analysis insightful. If you did, please like this video and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more engaging content like this. As always, I appreciate your support.